Hey, everybody. You are about to hear a brief retelling of the movie Lucy Shimmers and the Prince of Peace. Enjoy the movie. Lucy is playing with her father, James, in front of their house. Suddenly, she informs him that she can see her grandfather, Jackson. However, James becomes perplexed because Jackson is no longer alive and she cannot see him. He then informs Lucy that he knows she misses her grandfather a lot, but there is no one there. Lucy suddenly begins to cough, prompting James to take her indoors. Lucy's mother, Isabel, checks her temperature and tells her that she will need to see a doctor the next day since she has a fever. Just as James leaves, saying he needs to verify something, Lucy tells Isabel about a novel she's writing. She adds there's a sad man in the book, but when Isabel asks who it is, Lucy says she has no idea and saw the person in her dream. Isabel asks Lucy to let her know if there is anything she can do to help, and then she reminds Lucy that Christmas is just a few days away. Lucy is overjoyed to hear this and informs Isabel that she wants to be the one writing on the countdown board. Isabel agrees, and Lucy begins writing about it for the first time. Meanwhile, James is in his room, looking at a picture of Jackson, as if he is troubled by what Lucy has said. He also goes outside to see if he can spot his father, but Jackson is not visible to him. That night, James goes to check on Lucy before she falls asleep. He notices her writing in the book and asks about it. Lucy mentions the unhappy man in her book, but she also tells James that she does not know who he is. Lucy, on the other hand, claims that she and the deity would soon become friends with the unhappy man. James doesn't get it and urges her to go to bed early because she's sick. As he walks out, he feels Jackson's presence in the room but is unaware that he is right there. After James leaves, Jackson sits on Lucy's bed and requests to stay with her. Lucy feels pleased since she considers Jackson to be her best buddy. She also tells him she isn't feeling well, and Jackson tells her she has to sleep. Elsewhere, James tells Isabel about Lucy's assertion that she saw Jackson. Isabel is similarly perplexed, and she mentions the unhappy man from Lucy's book. Isabel expresses her concern over Lucy, but James tells her that everything will be okay. The following day, a prison doctor advises a preacher called Johnson that one of the inmates, Edgar, has a critical renal disease. The doctor says Edgar's kidneys are failing and he needs to be transported to a proper hospital if he has any hope of survival. Edgar overhears their conversation and interrupts them when he learns of his situation. Johnson assures the doctor that he'll speak with the warden to see what they can do for Edgar. He then enters into the room and tells Edgar that he needs an immediate transplant or he would die. Edgar doesn't seem to mind. He believes he deserves what he's getting. Johnson, on the other hand, reminds him that God always gives people second opportunities and that he should take use of this opportunity. Edgar believes he has run out of second chances, but Johnson says he will still speak with the warden on Edgar's behalf so that something may be done about his situation. Elsewhere, Isabel takes Lucy to the doctor, who diagnoses her with pneumonia. He claims he'll give Lucy some medicines and she'll feel better shortly. He does, however, inform Isabel that if her symptoms remain after she has taken the medicines for a few days, she should return with Lucy. At home, James contacts his mother, April, and informs her that Lucy has seen Jackson. April believes it's impossible, but she understands if Jackson appears to Lucy because he loved her so much and they cherished each other's company. She also claims that the house they are currently residing in was once where she and Jackson lived, and that he may have opted to stay. James is still curious about what Lucy saw, but April says she thinks Jackson is closer than they realize. Before hanging up the phone, she urges James not to worry since Lucy is a special girl. Meanwhile, Edgar is transferred to the hospital. When he arrives, he refuses to get off the bus, but as a jail officer called Luther attempts to rough him up, the warden instructs him to let Edgar pick when he wants to get off. As Edgar eventually exits the bus, the warden instructs him to sit in a wheelchair, but he declines. However, he is too weak to stand and falls, so he is put into the wheelchair. He is then escorted into a chamber, where the warden informs him that he approved the treatment because he believes Edgar deserves a second opportunity. Pastor Johnson also offers him a Bible, expressing his hope that Edgar will open it one day. They then tell him to take care of himself as they leave. However, Luther remains behind to threaten Edgar that he will not leave the hospital alive. Dr. Stenswick, the doctor in charge of Edgar's therapy, informs the warden and Johnson that the procedure will not be easy. She further claims that because he is a prisoner, his name will be further down the list, and he will not be able to receive a transplant soon enough. The warden claims to be aware of such incidents, but he must still follow proper procedures in order to preserve lives. He also adds Edgar would not bother them because guards will always be stationed with him. He then directs his jail guards, Wally and Luther, that Edgar must remain chained to his bed and can only leave his room for a routine kidney check. Luther says they'll make sure Edgar doesn't do anything weird, and he points to his rifle as a way to keep Edgar from fleeing. The warden is not pleased, and he orders Luther not to use his gun on Edgar because he can barely move and cannot flee. After that, they all depart, with Wally taking the first shift to watch Edgar. That night, James tries to provide Lucy's medications, but she refuses. Jackson enters the room and informs Lucy that James now understands how it feels because he, too, used to resist drugs as a child. Lucy chuckles and tells James what Jackson said, and despite his perplexed expression, James believes it is impossible to see Jackson. With 14 days till Christmas, James and Isabel are concerned as they realize it is time to take Lucy to the hospital again. Lucy asks if she'll spend some time in the hospital as they drive her away that night. Isabel explains that it is merely for a checkup and to make sure she is fine. When they arrive, the doctor says he wants to run some tests to assess how Lucy's pneumonia is going, but he assures them that she will be fine. Just as the doctor leaves, Isabel apologizes to Lucy for how she feels. She also says that she and James will be with her until she recovers. A nurse eventually arrives to collect Lucy's samples, following which she is instructed to relax. The following day, Lucy continues to draw for her book. James is with her, and Lucy mentions seeing the sad man in her dream again. When James asks who it is, she claims she still doesn't know, but she does note that the individual requires assistance. Suddenly, she asks James if he sees Jackson in the room. Lucy questions James's refusal to believe her when he claims there is no one there. James then says he believes her, but she knows he doesn't and will soon. Meanwhile, the doctor informs Isabel that Lucy's illness has progressed. He says they'll give her some medications to help her recover, but Lucy needs to be admitted to the hospital. April arrives on time, and Isabel hugs her after telling her that Lucy is not improving. As Lucy is being wheeled to her room, Edgar is also being wheeled to his exams, and it turns out they are in the same facility. When Lucy sees him, she encourages James to pause so she may get a better look at Edgar. Luther continues to wheel Edgar away, and Lucy tells her parents that Edgar is the unhappy guy she sees in her dreams. She then shows them her drawing, but while James doubts the veracity of her claims, Isabel and April assure Lucy that it resembles Edgar. The nurse exits after bringing Lucy inside her room, but James follows. He inquires about Edgar, and the nurse reveals that he is a prisoner waiting for a kidney transplant. James wonders if he should be concerned, but the nurse assures him that there is nothing to worry about because Edgar is always well guarded. She does, however, offer to modify Lucy's room, but James declines because it is unnecessary and he was simply inquisitive. Back in the room, Lucy meets with Isabel's father, Mike, who wishes he could be there with her, but his recent surgery prevents him from moving effectively. Lucy and Isabel understand and advise him to be careful. A while later, Dr. Stanswick arrives to check on Lucy. After conversing with her, the doctor requests to speak with her parents in private. She then informs Isabel and James that Lucy has a very serious infection, and if things don't go well, she may go into shock, which might kill her. Isabel is terrified to hear this, and she wonders whether Lucy will die, but Dr. Stanswick insists that it is merely the worst-case situation. Meanwhile, Luther begins his shift and notices Edgar looking at a picture of his family. Luther requests it, and despite his first reservations, Edgar eventually grants it to him. Luther chuckles about the photo, claiming Edgar would never see them again. Before exiting the room, he tears the picture in half and throws it back at Edgar. Edgar is upset, but he has little recourse. That night, James tells Isabel and April to go home, while he stays with Lucy overnight. After they go, Lucy prays before going to bed. While James is sleeping, Lucy slips out of bed and walks out of the room. She sees Bart, the hospital cleaner, and introduces herself. She then asks whether he is unhappy, and when he responds yes, she tells him not to worry since God loves him. She also says she will sketch him a picture and present it to him the next day. Jackson appears as she continues on her journey and inquires as to her destination. Lucy says she's going to see a buddy, and Jackson recognizes who she's talking about. She then asks him why she always feels stronger around him. Jackson informs her that angels always provide power to those who believe. He then informs her that he'll set an alarm near Edgar's room to distract Luther, who is playing games on his phone. This works beautifully, so Lucy goes in to visit Edgar. She introduces herself, but Edgar has no idea what she's doing there. Lucy says she wants to be friends with him. She also informs him that she saw him in her nightmares, and that God revealed his face to her. Edgar doesn't appear to be in the mood, but Lucy promises she'll return the next day so they can read the Bible together. Just as Edgar tries to persuade her not to return, Luther overhears him talking to someone. Lucy instantly hides when she sees Luther approaching. She inquires about his condition, and he responds that his kidneys are failing and that he requires a replacement. Lucy asks James whether she has one, and when he replies she has two, she tells Edgar she will give him one. James is taken aback by this and tells her that it is not how things work because she, too, needs them. As Edgar is wheeled away, James instructs Lucy to cease talking to him. She's upset because she believes that God loves Edgar, but James claims he's harmful. Isabel and April stay with Lucy that night, but while they sleep, Jackson arrives to get her up so she can meet Edgar. As she leaves the room, she meets Bart and hands him the picture she promised. He appreciates that, and after a while she slips back into Edgar's room. Both of them appear to get along, and Lucy hopes they recover soon. He shows her a picture of his family, and even though he claims they no longer care about him, Lucy assures him that they can still come for him if he believes. She then asks for Edgar's Bible and, after allowing him to read it for a bit, informs him that she must depart. As she walks back to her room, she notices an elderly lady named Betty. After introducing herself, she informs Betty that God loves her. She also asks Betty whether she can see Jackson, and she says yes. Lucy quickly returns to her room, and for the next few days, she continues to slip out to study the Bible with Edgar. For days before Christmas, Lucy sees another little patient and offers him a picture, telling him that God loves him. On Christmas Eve, Lucy notices Edgar's wife, Adrian, and his daughter, Tiana, about to enter Edgar's room to see him. Pastor Johnson brought them, and he thinks Edgar is unaware of their presence. He enters first and appears pleased to see Edgar finally reading the Bible. Adrian and Tiana arrive shortly after, and Edgar is overjoyed to see them after such a long absence. On Christmas Day, while her family is present, Lucy informs Dr. Stanswick that she wishes to give Edgar one of her kidneys as a Christmas present. Everyone in the room is astonished to hear this, but Lucy insists that Edgar is a friend and that she does not want him to die. James asks the doctor whether it's feasible, and when she says yes, he and Isabel agree to think about it. That night, Lucy informs Edgar that she has finished her novel and must deliver it to him. She asks James to take her, and while they drive, James is surprised to see Lucy greeting other young patients and referring to them as her friends. As they are about to enter Edgar's chamber, she informs James that Jackson would activate the alarm to distract Luther, which surprises him, despite the fact that he cannot see Jackson. When they reach Edgar's room, he is overjoyed to see Lucy and tells James how she changed his life. He then tells Lucy about his wife and daughter, who had come to meet him. Lucy is overjoyed for him, and she claims that God revealed him to her through her dreams. She then hands over her book before departing with James. Before they leave, Lucy notices Luther's keys on the chair, where he is still fighting with a nurse about how the alarm went off. She takes the key to Edgar's cuffs and returns them to him, allowing him to remove them whenever he wants. When Lucy returns to her room, her condition worsens, prompting April to visit the doctor. Edgar also begins reading Lucy's book, and as soon as he finishes, he unlocks his handcuffs and goes out to locate her. However, when he arrives in her room, the staff are struggling to revive her, and she is proclaimed dead. Lucy's parents are worried, and Edgar is also upset about it. Meanwhile, James watches Lucy's spirit walk away, and when he pursues, he notices her with Jackson. He begs her not to leave, but she simply gestures at him. Days later, one of Lucy's kidneys is donated to Edgar, who recovers and reunites with his family. Years later, James and Isabel had a newborn son called Alex. As James plays with his son in front of the house, he notices Jackson and Lucy waiting at the gate. Alex asks what James is gazing at, and he responds it's his grandfather and sister. Jackson holds Lucy's hand as they walk away.